Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we're all trying to learn together how to let God's peace reign and just peace out because He's in control, right? It's an everyday thing though. It's not like there's a button to push. You just go peace out, hit the button, and everything's cool from there on. It's still just that process of learning how to do that, right? So, welcome to Peace Out. Let's get started. Before I get started, let me remind you that the only bookstore I have open right now is Amazon. I'm working on a whole new website right now, but Amazon has, I added two new study guides for Kindle. They're short, so I can't make them for print because they're too little to print. About I'll have my website up pretty soon, and you can print the. You'll be able to download the ebook, and then you can print it out if you want. I'm going to make it more into a workbook style, so it's easier to print and use that way. But anyway, so check out my Amazon store because it does have a couple of new study guides up there. They're old study guides, but it's a new format. They've never been available on Kindle, so ooh, there's the wow factor, right? Anyway, I hope you're having a good morning. Hope you're having a good week too. So far, so good, right? So yesterday we talked about Matthew 11, and we talked about where Jesus invited those listening, including us, because we're reading, to come to me. He said, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you. Learn from me. I'm gentle and lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls. So he made this invitation to come and rest, right? And we talked about that. Well, as we talked about that yesterday, I took that as my scripture to meditate on yesterday, and just what does it mean to come to God? What does it mean to actually rest? What does it mean when he says he will give rest to our souls? How does that work? Because I want scripture to be practical. Now we're not always going to understand it or even know how to apply some things, because some things we just got to take by faith, right? There's just some things that it's just in that realm, and you ain't gonna get it nowhere else, right? But looking, I want to try to apply it. So that's what my meditation was as I was working with Chris yesterday. I meditated on that. And this morning when I got up, I thought, there's a Old Testament scripture that's kind of the parallel, but they didn't listen. Now we've used it before because it's one of our peace out scriptures, even though he doesn't mention peace, and it's in Isaiah 30:15, and it says this, and I like this. I like the New Living with this one. It says, "The Sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel, says, only in returning to me and waiting for me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength." But the next phrase says this, "But you would have none of it. You said, no, we'll do it on ourselves," in a sense. So I started thinking about those two scenarios. Which one, it comes down to a choice. Jesus says, "Come to me, I'll give you rest." In the Old Testament, it's kind of the same thing, worded differently. "Come to me, let me take your yoke," right? Let me give you salvation and deliverance, and let me give you strength, confident. Let me give you strength, I guess it says. But then they said they wouldn't. They said, "No, we're not going to trust you." And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Why wouldn't we? Right? Why wouldn't we trust God? Why wouldn't we come to Him? I mean, I don't have a better option. If you got a better option, let me in on it. But I'm pretty sure you can't come up with one. But I thought, so these two passages we see, Jesus says, "Come to me and rest." And then in the Old Testament, they just literally said no. They just said they didn't want to. What's up with that, right? It's a choice. What if Daniel didn't choose to keep praying? Oh, he'd have avoided the lion's den, right? We wouldn't even have that story to encourage us that God's going to come for us, even in a hard situation, right? What if the three Hebrew children had said, "Oh, we'll just bow"? I remember asking my mom that question when I was a kid. I was like, "Why can't you just bow and not really pray to that God, and then you don't have to go to the fiery furnace?" I don't even remember what her answer was after she stopped laughing. But they didn't have to. But they wouldn't have seen the deliverance of that fiery furnace. They wouldn't have had that experience of Jesus coming too early and walking with them in the fire and delivering them out of that. They'd have missed the good part if they had skipped the bad part, right? And what if Peter didn't get out of the boat? There were 11 people, other people sitting in the boat watching Peter's experience. They were only spectators while Peter was a participant. They did not get what it felt like, even though it was just for a little bit, to walk on water. They missed the whole experience because they didn't get out of the boat. They didn't even get out of the boat when they saw he was walking on the water. They just sat there, right? So do we want to be Peter? And because Jesus said kind of the same thing there. Peter's like, hey, if it's really you, Jesus, tell me to come and I'll come. And Jesus goes, come. So here we have him saying again, come to me. Come on, walk out here, baby. And he jumped out the boat, right? And he walked on the water until he looked at the storm, but that's okay. He had the experience of miraculously walking on the water. Nobody else got that experience because they didn't come. Maybe they could have all jumped out of the boat and said, let's just all go, or they could have jumped out of the boat when they saw Peter making it, right? But they just sat in the boat. What were they thinking? But they didn't come. They didn't choose to walk on the water to Jesus, right? And so, and aren't these stories that have grit, right? Now there were other people, there were other people that kind of messed up, right? They didn't really trust God, so to speak. We've talked a lot about Jonah lately, and now he repented in the end, and God redeemed that whole situation. But for a minute, he said, "Nope, you said that way, I go that way. You want me to go there? Nope, I'm going the opposite direction." He literally said no to God, and lived to tell about it, right? But he ended up in the belly of the well. So, then we've got Samson. Samson, God said, don't go marry those people. And he did. And God said, don't tell anybody. He told Delilah because he thought she was beautiful. You know what? The enemy's not going to lure us with things we don't like. The enemy of our soul isn't going to tempt us with things that we aren't tempted with, right? And he studied people so long. He knows so well how to trip us up. He knows what will distract us, like Gideon and Samson and Jonah, because Gideon led the children of Israel in a great miraculous battle, and God they wiped out an army with just 300 men on their side, right? And no weapons, as a matter of fact, right? And then in the end, what did he do? He made an idol and led the people astray because he said no to following God's way. He said no to faith. Maybe he didn't use those words, but his actions said no. And so we have these stories of Daniel, the three Hebrew children, Peter, Joseph, right? All these guys who followed God, pursued God, saw hard times, but also saw God's deliverance. Then we have these three, Jonah, Samson, and Gideon, that didn't always follow God, but God still brought redemption, right? Jonah was right with God in the end. He repented in the belly of the well. God didn't just wipe him out. He didn't say, okay, you don't want to follow me, off the face. You can just flick him off the face of the earth, right? No, God, whether we follow him or not, his mercy remains. However we respond to his call to come to him, he's going to be right there. If we say no, he'll say, well, I'll just wait till you come back around then, right? I'll wait till you get it. If we say yes, though, we get to experience that peace right now. We don't have to work through a myriad of problems and circumstances and find solutions on our own until we get to the end of our proverbial rope and say, okay, God, I do need you. And you know what? He doesn't say, no, you didn't choose me a while ago. I don't want you now. No, he's so gracious. Even when we make dumb choices, even when we make grave mistakes, he doesn't, we realize, oh, I made a huge mistake here, God. Please take me back. He doesn't go, no. Oh, no. You had this little window to accept me, and you didn't. So I don't know what you're going to do now, but I'm not here now. No, he always graciously says, it's all right. Let me fix what you broke. Let me show you what redemption really looks like. Let me show you what grace really looks like. Let me show you how rich my mercies are for you. He waits. Now, he won't always prevent the problems that we create by rejecting his peace, by rejecting his salvation, by rejecting his righteousness. But he will correct us when we come to him. He'll fix us. He'll restore us. He never says, I'm not going to restore you. You had your chance. No, he's so gracious. I love that about God. I love that about that. And you know what I really like about the word here? And we've talked about all these different stories just kind of wrapped up in one and found that gritty faith. That strong faith that people, because in the end, even those who disobeyed came back to God. Well, we don't know about Gideon, but Samson, Jonah, all these guys did, right? And so I love that gritty faith. But I love that the Bible doesn't just tell us the ones that did it right. God lets us see the ones who did it wrong. As a matter of fact, I meant to work in a scripture out of, I think it's First Kings. Oh, I don't know which one it is. First Kings, I want to say 11 or 13. And there was a young prophet who God told him something specific to do. He said, "Go to the city, don't talk to anybody, do this, tell them my words, and come back." And he gave him specific directions. And he followed the first half. And then when he got there, an old prophet told him, said, "Well, I'm a prophet too, and God told me to tell you to come to my house and eat." And the young prophet disobeyed what God said. And then on his way home, he got eaten by a lion. And the old prophet began to cry and stuff. But he tricked him. That young prophet disobeyed God. But you know what? God has grace for that. God has grace when we mess up. That's what we see in the story of Jonah. Jonah messed up. I mean, purposefully did something wrong, and God met him there. Samson, he knew what he was doing with Delilah. He just got caught up in his own thinking and in his own desires. But God never said, "Don't come back over here. You chose your route. Just go on." No, he took all of them back. He has forgiveness for all of us. He has grace, and he didn't keep the bad stories out. He didn't keep the stories of the failures out. We don't know what Gideon did. We know even Solomon, the wisest man on the earth, at the end, he ended up with all these wives and did exactly what he told everybody not to do, right? Don't follow this. And he followed it because that was his trick, right? But God's not going to say, "Oh, you know, you followed it. Now you made your bed, now lie in it." No, he brings grace into whatever situation we even create. I know I can create some crazy situations, but God's grace is always enough. And that's what I love about one of the many things I love about the Bible is he tells us all of them. He tells us the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's what builds that gritty faith in us, right? And that's what I want. I want to have gritty faith because and that grit that comes with that faith that says, "You know what? Put me in the lion's den, but I'm going to still pray. Put me in the fiery furnace, but I'm not bowing to your gods. Put me in in the belly of the well." Wherever I go, I know that I've got God's grace. But it all comes down to that one choice when Jesus says, "Come." Will you come? Will you accept his peace? Will you accept his salvation? Will you accept his deliverance? Will you accept what he's got? It all comes down to, will you trust him? Right? Because we see Jonah didn't really trust God for a minute. Samson didn't. Gideon didn't. Right? So it all comes down to that choice. Are we going to trust God when he says, "I'm going to give you peace"? Are we going to believe it and accept it? Let it rain? Right? Or are we going to be like the 11 that sat in the boat in the same storm but didn't get to walk on the water? Right? You know what though? Jesus didn't say, "Okay, I'm going to calm the storm around Peter and the rest of y'all don't get that." He calmed the storm for everybody, even those who sat in the boat when Peter jumped out, right? Because he's so cool like that. God is just cool like that. And he will not throw us away. That's an awesome thing. That's why we can just peace out. So we can just peace out. Have a great day. I'll catch you again tomorrow.